All right. Well, thanks for coming back to the Bigfoot Society podcast. I have the privilege of having Mr. Ron Reed on today, and we are going to talk about all sorts of cool stuff. He is a Bigfoot researcher, outdoor adventurer. He likes to go hiking all over the place. Lots of cool stuff. What else would you like to add in there, Ron? What do you got going on?
Mm. I'm real big into making movies and stuff. Still trying to learn a lot of that. But yeah, kind of a jack of all trades, outdoor enthusiast. And I guess recently I've been I relocated from the South in Tennessee. And so now I'm in
Okay.
a brand new area here in the Midwest, up by the Great
Oh,
Lakes. And so
okay.
I'm getting into the lake monsters and river
Nice.
serpents and stuff like that now.
Oh,
So
nice.
it's been kind of interesting to venture out of the normal Bigfoot territory that I stayed in.
Totally, totally. I myself am in central Iowa, so I'm in the
Okay.
Midwest as well. But I don't want to dox you, so I saw it on your YouTube channel though. You're in a nice area, the state you're in. But
Oh yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Yep.
Um, but no, your YouTube channel, you got a lot of cool stuff on there. We'll have to definitely put it in the show notes. But I'm kind of curious. I heard about you from my friend Tate Hieronymus from the Bluff Creek Project podcast. How did you meet Tate?
um. So yeah. So anybody that knows Tate, he's part of the Bluff Creek project, and so he was up there at Louse Camp,
Okay.
and it was probably late. It was like 10:30, maybe pushing 11 o'clock, and I kind of roll up in Lau's camp, kind of unannounced by everybody there.
Oh my
Steven
goodness.
Struford over at
Yep.
Bigfoot Books kind of recommended that I check it out, and that everybody there is currently hanging out by the creek
Okay.
there. And so I just kind of like showed up and spent a little time getting lost in the backcountry, in my
Oh,
little
nice.
Ford Escape, and eventually made my way down into the camp, and I had my usual travel companion, Bandit. He's my blue heeler shepherd mix. He's been
Oh,
my
cool.
travel companion for 10 years now. And
Oh, wow.
yeah, we rolled up in there. And this was like on the midway point of like a 10,000-mile road trip, through US
Oh
and
my
Canada.
goodness.
And
Really?
yeah, and we just kind of showed up there and started talking to people. I met a lot of cool people down there in
I
Laos
bet.
camp. And then I
Yeah.
think I think within an hour or so of meeting Tate, we were probably yelling our heads off at a different location somewhere near Bluff Creek, trying to lure in a Bigfoot. I want to say we were lasted a whole 10 minutes of trying to do it legitimately before we were yelling in mafia accents and just being like
Oh, that's
completely
great.
ridiculous. Like come on out here and fight me.
Yeah, nice, nice.
It obviously we tried to shake it up and try some more nuanced approaches to Bigfoot research, and it didn't
Right,
go
right.
well. We didn't observe any activity from that. But
That'd be weird if that was the thing that just like, you know, that
yeah,
was the trigger point
that's
was terrible mafia impersonations and like
yeah,
Bigfoot's like
yeah,
I've been waiting my whole life for this.
yeah. This is where I draw the line. Humans have got to go.
Oh my goodness. So you said a road trip across the US, was that from Tennessee out to Laos camp then or
Well, I mean, I like to lump in Florida too,
oh, okay.
because my sister had a wedding in St. Augustine, and so I went to do that, and we got back from that. So I was back at home in Tennessee for like a whole 2 days. I picked the
Okay.
dog up out of the dog sitter's residence, and then from there it was like this big road trip, across Colorado, the Grand Canyon. I'd been wanting to do like a coast to coast trip,
Mm,
for a really long time, and I finally was able to pull it off. I had a vehicle that was up to the challenge, and but
yeah.
no, the idea was to get out to the West Coast and walk some of the Bigfoot Trail, which was a route kind of designed out there. It's kind of an unofficial trail network that was kind of put together to showcase conifer tree diversity.
Okay.
Um, and the person who designed the route, I was talking to them. I made some attempts to have some interviews with people. I'm sitting on a pile of content that's just undeveloped at the moment. I'm working full time, and
Oh,
I'm in a
sure.
critical role at my current job, so it's kind of hard to pull a lot of that stuff off the back burner. But
Yeah.
I went out there and I did a lot of great interviews with some people out at Louse Camp, and then I did some additional work with the director of the EPA on
Really? Oh, wow.
um, the tribal EPA in Hoopa. And so I did some interviews, and we kind of talked about. I guess that my film goal was to talk about the Klamath Mountains, talk
Hmm.
about the biodiversity of the region, have a personal hike, and then integrate concepts of environmental consciousness and Bigfoot, kind of in a big, like,
Wow.
yeah, really elaborate film. And so
That is really cool.
I'm still trying to work all that together. But I'm real passionate about um, sustainability and
Hmm.
wildlife conservation. And I always feel like, for people that normally don't have those discussions, Bigfoot's like a good catalyst for that. Like,
Mm.
you're
Yep.
out there
Yep.
looking for Bigfoot and you're like, man, it'd be a real shame if all of this disappeared because we were irresponsible.
Right. Oh, that's awesome. So, if you come out when you come out with that movie, is that something that'll be on YouTube, or what an actual, like, what are you thinking?
I think it'll probably be like a little series that I'll split up
Okay.
on um on YouTube though. But that was the project of 2018. Right now I'm working on the next year's project, which was, I spent 3 weeks in Australia.
Whoa.
The following year, my sister lives out there, so
Okay.
we kind of road tripped a little bit, but we actually stopped a little bit in Queensland, and I did a few little Yowie investigations.
Oh, no way.
So yeah, I mean, it was
Oh
it
my
was kind of
goodness.
interesting. I recently posted some pictures of some tracks I found in a creek, and they're kind of
Wow.
obscure, weird tracks, but there's like this group on Facebook that um, they'll try to explain, like, oh, well, you came across these types of tracks, or hey, that's clearly a bobcat. Nobody had a straight answer. Like, there was a
Oh,
debate for a
really?
while saying
Whoa.
maybe a camel, but camels are more common in Western Australia,
Okay.
and the only camel farm we could find was like an hour south, and it was just kind of in a weird area for just a camel to waltz down a creek bed. So I don't know if it was
Wow.
a yowie, but
That's weird, man.
it definitely was like a big mystery that kind of lingered, as part of my investigation. So
So let's step back a little bit then. So what is it that drew you to Bigfoot originally? Is it something where
mm,
you were in it as a little kid, or
yeah,
what's
I
your
mean,
story
really,
there?
I remember my earliest memory of Bigfoot was going to the babysitters in
Okay.
the summer, and her wicked little son was a couple years older than me, and he was telling me like all these horrible stories of how his friend was mauled by a Bigfoot.
Oh no.
It came into his house one day and
Oh
his friend was
no.
on the bunk bed, and it was so big that it got him on the top bunk, but he hid on the bottom bunk. And like, I was like 6, so I was like, yeah, that sounds terrifying.
Oh
Big
yeah.
monster just kicks the door down and like beats up your friend, and and yeah, and you're like cowering under the bed, like, so yeah, he was telling me that. And then he'd like have a deer head just severed in the woods, and then like they'd hear a roar, and he's completely
Oh
just he saw
wow.
probably one Bigfoot movie, and was like just having the time of his life making his own scary movie plot. But I remember being terrified of Bigfoot when I was young, and then I got a little bit older and I was more interested in some of those other shows. My dad was one of those dads that made you watch a few scary movies. You had to
Yeah,
sit
yep,
there
yep,
and watch them.
yep.
And uh and so I think over time I just got numb to the fear, and then over time I was like, because I was interested in wildlife, I grew up in that Steve Irwin Crocodile Hunter
Oh
and
yeah, totally.
early Jeff Corwin.
Yep, yep.
um so like Animal Planet was fire back then, and
Mhm.
it was all about animals, believe it or not. And
That's weird, man.
yeah, so I mean that's kind of what got me into like to the animal side of it. And then when you combine like that mystery and that creepy factor, that's it was the show Animal X that got me
Oh
kind of looking
yeah, yeah, yeah,
closer at the
yeah.
TV show.
Yep.
And then from there, other shows like Monster Quest popped up. But I mean, I was reading Jeff Meldrum at like eighth grade.
Wow.
And you really don't
Nice.
understand a lot of that terminology, but luckily, he's a guy that will step back and explain it in
Mm-hmm.
like layman's terms.
Totally.
So I mean, I grasped a lot at a young age, and I remember being in like the discussion club, and I did like a 2 or 3 part thing on Bigfoot and
Oh
arguing
wow.
for its existence, and a lot of my peers ended up like switching sides, from
Really?
skeptic to saying, "Hey, yeah, I'm
Oh,
more
no way.
open-minded to it now." And then that got me like vice president position the next year, and then president the following year. So I mean, it was like Bigfoot started carrying me
That's
places in
it.
like school and
Yeah.
stuff. So
I'm going
I always got
places,
A's on my
Bigfoot.
Bigfoot papers.
Nice.
But
That's
yeah, I
awesome.
guess yeah, it was it when I graduated. That's when I first got out there, and most people are like, "Oh, there's a Bigfoot sighting about an hour from my home, so I'll get in my car and I'll drive down there." No, my
Okay.
first Bigfoot investigation was I'm going to go to Six Rivers National Forest at the age of 17,
Whoa.
and that was cool. I mean, I was in over my
Yeah.
head, way over my head. Almost got, killed by bears, rattlesnakes, marijuana growers. I came across some areas that looked like there might have been some farming going. There was some additional irrigation pipes in the area. There were some
Oh
vague plants
man.
being covered up by tarps or something like that. And it's just kind of like I didn't really know what I was getting into, but luckily I had some people looking out for me out there. I made some friends and they were like, "Hey,
Oh, that's good.
stay away from that. Let's
Yeah,
find a
maybe
safe
not
spot
so
for you."
much this area.
Yeah.
Oh
So,
man. 17.
yeah, I turned
That's
18 on the
crazy.
flight back. So,
Wow.
yeah, it was
Man.
really difficult to get my parents like to be okay with that.
I
And
totally could see how that would be a thing. Like how your parents did you really tell them everything, or you're like, I'm just kind of going out there,
yeah, it's just kind of a camping trip, and they knew I was,
Yeah.
pretty good at camping, but then it was kind of
Okay.
like, "Oh, I guess it's it's not a quite camp in the park. It's a little bit more wild than that."
Man, that's
Yeah.
crazy. Tell me about your hiking the Appalachian Trail.
Okay, so that was, gosh, I guess going on 6 years ago now.
Wow.
2015. It actually started with a Bigfoot trip. I
Really?
went out. I was just kind of working a kind of dead end job. Wasn't getting paid right and everything. I was just like, man, I need to
Mm-hmm.
get some time off. So I went in and I told them, hey, I'm going to take a few days off, and they were okay with it. And I ended up doing like a 4 or 5 day investigation, and part of it was going to be in North Carolina, and part of it was going to be
Okay.
like on Tennessee. Bald Mountain
Yeah.
is Big Bald Mountain is a
Yep.
destination in Tennessee. It's more or less on the border, but it's along the Appalachian Trail, maybe
Mm-hmm.
350 to 400 miles in.
Yeah.
And I went there because there were reports of the Bald Mountain Monster or Big Bald Monster or something like
I've
that.
not heard of this one. This
It
sounds
it goes
cool,
back to
man.
like almost colonial times, and
No way.
it's like it was one of those types of stories where there's like anytime there was a settler cart or something, some merchants going up over the mountain pass, something would come out and and like harass them or something like that. But I was like, that sounds cool, and it almost like there were a few local reports that were modern in and around that area that kind of turned me on to investigating it.
Okay.
So I went there and was just like, let's take a look. And it happened to be on the Appalachian Trail. And
Wow.
I happened to go during the portion of the through hiking season where most of the southbound or the northbound hikers coming from Georgia are like
Mm-hmm.
walking right through. So I met
Ah.
like 30 to 40 hikers just that one day that were
Oh,
passing
nice.
through. And they all had their original trail names and stuff like that.
Yeah.
That portion, where I was doing my Bigfoot investigation, the I don't know if you know like what a bald is. It's just like there's just a grassy knoll. It's like a little meadow on top of
Okay.
a mountain.
Okay.
And so they're really ecologically important for different, birds that come through, and they'll
Hmm.
eat like the different seeds of different plants that grow there. But there's no trees, and so you just get like a 360-degree view around you.
Interesting.
Um, so I remember there, I watched the sunset. There was a meteor shower that night, and
Oh,
then the
beautiful.
sunrise, and then up to the sunrise. I was sitting there. I was sitting further down the hillside, and my dog was like above me. I turned around, he was like also sitting enjoying the view,
Nice.
and we were hearing like turkey, down in the valley, barred owl down in the valley, and then there was like this deer bounding down the hillside too, and that was just kind of like, it was just like this little moment of serenity, and it was kind
Mm,
of, it,
that's
it just
awesome.
dawned on me. I was like, I think now's the time to, while I'm young, while the dog's young, to like
Hmm.
hike the entirety of the trail, because it
Amazing.
had been kind of in the back of my mind, and I've done sections with friends, but it was like, this is what I got to do. This is what's been missing from my relatively unfulfilled life. At the
Yeah.
time, there were a lot of relationship troubles, a lot of like life difficulties, a lot of unfulfilled like work roles and stuff. And I was like, I need a change of pace. I need to plan my life in a different direction, and I need the time to do that correctly. And
Mm.
so that was the Appalachian Trail. I instantly got back within a week of that trip. I had a second job that
Oh,
gave
wow.
me the funding that I needed to afford a through hike. And fast forward, a little bit less than a year from that point, and I was on the trail in Georgia, and my parents were waving me goodbye and good luck, and I started walking.
So my father was really into hiking when I was growing up, and I have hiked all of Connecticut and Massachusetts on the AT with him
Okay.
um when I was in high school. But explain a little bit. So I don't think I want to make sure the listeners know how much of a time commitment it is for you to do the Appalachian Trail. That's a big thing.
Um, some people, they crush through it. They go
Hmm.
ultralight. They get support at different road crossings, and when they are literally running on the trail, they can get it done in around 3 months and some change.
Yeah.
Some other people on the tail side of that, maybe additional health complications or difficulties, age limitations, I guess, they might get done in about 8 months or so. So the average comes out at about 6 months. And that was about how
Yeah.
long it took me to walk the entirety of the trail.
Wow.
You're unemployed,
Yeah.
you're
Yeah.
you're walking along like mountain trails. You come across a few road crossings each day. There are some portions of the trail that are more remote, and there's not as many road crossings.
Hmm.
But every 8 miles, I'd say on average, you get to shelters and you get
Yep.
to water sources at different points. So you're out there filtering stream water through your little portable filter. You're carrying, everything you need with you, to get through your days. And then you're hitchhiking into town or calling a shuttle, to resupply, after 3 or 4 days of hiking in the
That's
wilderness.
crazy. Yeah.
So yeah, it was it was pretty cool for me. I was able to finally get out there and have a big. I mean, I wasn't any stranger to big adventures at that point, but to do that for a total of 2,189.2 miles
Yep.
was definitely larger scale than
Oh
anything else
man.
I'd pulled off in the past.
That's so
Um,
cool.
and to have my dog there the whole way like that.
Mm.
I mean, we were close before, but like now, I mean, that trip
Yep.
really boosted the bond, so to speak. You really get to understand the little subtleties of like what your dog's trying to tell you with his
I
tail or
bet.
with his ears, how he looks up at you. So, um, yeah, that was, it was definitely pretty grand. Like,
Man.
in just about any wildlife you could think of. We've had
Oh,
some type of
totally, man.
encounter with it.
Yeah. When I remember a part in Connecticut hiking through these pine forests, and it's like there was a few parts where it's like there's something watching me right now, and I hope it's not a mountain lion, because like you just get the hair on the back of your neck standing up. It's like,
Yeah,
yeah, you're out there, man. You're out there.
yeah, yeah. And it wouldn't surprise me if there was a mountain lion there. That's one of
Totally.
those the wildlife and game officials, it's funny to me because, they'll say, well, they're not in this state, or they're not really, they haven't been reported here, but a lot of those animals are reclaiming their historical ranges. Like,
Oh,
just,
totally. Yeah.
we don't have bears in Middle Tennessee, but like a year ago we had one like walk down my home street, like,
Mm-hmm.
and so we also caught mountain lions on our cameras, our trail cameras and stuff,
Oh,
like
yeah.
in different parts of the state. So it's hard to, you can't track every animal out there. So they just kind of show up where they show up.
That is true. I mean, we have mountain lions show up in the middle of Des Moines, Iowa, and
Yeah.
they took one out where it was trying to stalk a class of kids in the middle of the city, and it was right outside the fence. I'm not even kidding. You could. It's
Wow.
a few years back, but you can look it up. Were there any points when you were hiking along the trail where any 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 so you had been searching for Bigfoot before? Did you work that into your Appalachian Trail hike at all, or was it you were pretty much just
Yeah,
focusing on the hike?
there were actually, like, I actually had like a, because I've been putting this Up the Trail series on
Mhm.
YouTube. I'm
Mhm.
still not done with that, like going back to, being distracted by other things, it's kind of
Totally.
breaks the continuity. But there were a few episodes that I had that had Bigfoot in there, like where I stopped and observed something about Bigfoot in the area. I'd hear hikers would tell me stories about some other local person having an
Mm.
encounter and randomly telling them.
Oh,
Uh,
wow.
there was, for me, there was a point in North Carolina. There's a town
Mhm.
called Hot Springs, North
Okay.
Carolina, and it's where there's a little bit of UFO activity, some paranormal stuff. Like, people
Nice.
reported seeing ghosts in historical times, and there
Nice.
were Bigfoot sightings. And this little town is very unassuming. It's just nestled in the mountains by a little mountain stream. There's a couple of little diners where you can get some good lunch, but it's got all this like weird paranormal and cryptid based activity around it,
Really?
and they call it. They got a little slogan in there in that town, and it's Hot Springs, North Carolina, where Mayberry meets the Twilight Zone.
Oh,
And
that's
so
awesome.
so I've got an
That's really
episode in
cool.
my hiking series that's called Weirdsville, USA, and we just
Nice.
kind of talk about some of the different things that are happening there. And I do a little bit of a investigation down by the river. Not really too much happening there, but it was just kind of, it's a little check mark in the middle of nowhere that I think about revisiting from time to time,
Mm,
because it's just, this is not there's not a lack of good stories coming out of that area. So
gotcha. When you to fast forward then when you went out to the Bigfoot trail, did you have any experiences or anything out of the ordinary during that trail?
yeah, it was right out of the package, really.
Wow.
Um, and really, I think I had some more strange things as I went from one location to another from the road trip. So when I was on the Bigfoot
Okay.
trail, because it was so remote and a lot of it was overgrown, and the data set that I had for the trail was a little bit outdated, I
Mm,
had a lot of difficulty navigating out there. So I kind of, at one point, I was just like, well, why don't I just go to the more populated areas? Let's put the idea of a through hike of the whole 300 plus miles on hold. And
okay.
let's just do like a solid 100 miles of various sections,
Sure.
going to different wilderness areas, different highlights in those trails, like that I want to see, So I went to a lot of like mountain lakes and stuff. But it was the first day on the trail. I got a ride down there. It was raining
Okay.
the whole time. So I'm already like sopping wet, like straight out of the car. And me and Bandit are trudging along. It's getting late in the evening, and we keep stopping because I'm trying to identify all the conifers that I'm walking by, because I'm trying
Sure.
to,
Right, right.
the
Yeah.
creator made that a big highlight of the trail. So I'm like, well, I got to learn more about these evergreen trees, right? So I'm stopping down
Yeah.
and looking at a pine cone and like looking at it and rotating it and saying, well, the needles are this long on the branches, and the pine cone is approximately 7 inches long. So this
Okay.
might be a Shasta, whatever,
Right.
but it's late in the evening, it's getting dark, and it's still raining. And I have to set up camp. And so I'm trying to scout areas and I'm going along this ridge and it's over down below me is like this river that's flowing. And I'm not entirely sure off the top of my head what river or creek that was, but I remember seeing something
Mm.
and it was kind of dusk. So I didn't have like a good visual, but I remember thinking it was a stump when I walked by and there were lots of
Okay.
trees obscuring my path. And then it seemed to me, and this is extremely iffy, and I don't know if it was just because I was tired from walking
Yep.
in the rain or whatever, but it seemed to me that that stump like grew in stature,
Oh man. Yeah.
like something that had been like squatting down now was crouching upward,
Oh
and
man.
and I continued to walk, and before my brain could process it, I was like,
Yep.
wait a minute, was that the same thing I was staring at the last time in the clearing? And so again, the trees obscured it this a second time, and I tried to backtrack, and all of a sudden I couldn't find that stump on my line of
Man.
sight. And so I went all the way back and I was looking around. And I think at one point when I was trying to backtrack and rediscover the stump I was looking at, I heard something further down because it was like a little shelf on the ridge, and then so it
Okay.
goes down after that flat spot. So,
Oh
so,
wow.
so I don't know if I was observing correctly or whatever, but it seemed like something was there. It changed position and then it was gone. And this was after finding a depression in the soil.
Really?
But it but I can't say
Hmm.
that that was like a clear track. I looked at that, I saw some
Okay.
toe indentations, I've showed it to a few other people, and I've compared it to what other people think are Bigfoot tracks, but I still think that could be bear. So
Yeah.
I don't know, like, it was a little weird, but not really. It was some type of animal track. I know that
Interesting.
much. It wasn't just, like, soil getting kicked up or from, like a rock getting pulled out of the ground. Um but yeah, I mean, I found that, and then the next day, like I set up camp after that, and I spent a considerable amount of time trying to rediscover that thing I was looking at. And there were a few
Oh,
other
I
stumps
bet.
in the woods, and I'm starting to think, well, maybe I imagine it over far more to the right than it actually was. Maybe that one all the way to the left was what I was staring at. I might have gotten lost in my own head for a second, and then thought I saw something out of the ordinary, and maybe it wasn't all that out of the ordinary. But I do remember, like, kind of in the dead of night, and I don't know, like, I could be like one of those lucid dreamers that has, like, something going
Yeah.
on, like, in their
Right.
head, and then they think it's actually happening. Um, but yeah, I remember waking up feeling like I heard a couple of knocks that night.
Wow. Oh
And
man.
then the following day, this part I definitely know happened. So anything that happened that night before when I was tired and it
Okay.
was raining and I went to sleep shortly after, I don't know too much about those details, but I do know like I was sound in mind and alert and awake when my dog was growling at something, some
Ooh.
unseen thing behind me the entire like hike out of that area.
Oh
So
man.
I mean, we did a 20-mile day that day,
Hmm.
and I want to say for a solid 12 before we hit the road, like something was my dog just kept looking behind me and doing a real
12
low,
miles.
yeah, like
Oh
so
man.
it was
No
just like
way.
a growl, like he was
You're
just kind
being
of like,
tracked, dude.
yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
and I was in the state of mind too though, like I'm in Northern California, there can
Yep.
be a mountain lion.
Oh,
Um,
totally. Yeah.
so I
Yeah.
mean, I spent time in the Everglades, and I'm pretty convinced at one point a Florida panther stopped by the tent.
Oh man.
But in
Ugh.
terms of that, like I don't know, like I don't know if anything was up there in California.
Yep.
Um, but yeah, I mean that was on the Bigfoot Trail itself. That was maybe the only weird thing that
Okay.
happened. Um, it wasn't until like later I'd go up to like Skookum Meadows in
Oh yeah.
Washington, and
Cool.
it was closed off. The gate was closed for the season, and I just
Okay.
parked at the gate and hiked in,
Oh
and
man.
had something creeping around, and dog wasn't too happy about that either.
Oh, it's like
Um,
growling at something
yeah,
again?
something came right up
Wow.
behind us. Well, I actually found a really good hiding spot, like in a natural blind, and I brought
Really?
a chair, a sleeping bag. I was getting cozy. I was reading a
Mm-hmm.
book,
Yep.
and something creeped up right behind us. There's tons of elk tracks in that area too. So,
Yeah. So
uh,
plenty of a good food source, definitely
yeah.
for stuff. Dude, man, you get into some wild stuff wherever you go. So what are you getting into in the Midwest then?
In
That's
the Midwest,
yeah,
oh,
that's what I'm kind of curious about.
well, every Great Lake has some type of Great Lake monster.
Totally.
Um, I'm I I'm trying to think of some of them off the top of my head, but I can't think. But even the little pocket lakes,
Mm.
there's lake monsters out there in like Devil's Lake, which makes you wonder why it's called Devil's Lake.
Yeah,
Um,
right.
and Lake Winnebago's got something out there. And so I've kind of been jumping into those, but I actually have already been to Bray Road a few times, where they've
Okay.
got the Beast of Bray
Okay.
Road.
Yep.
Yeah, so a
Yep.
little bit of a dogman like search going on there. I was
All right.
patrolling the roadsides and had a little thermal camera. Like every time I went out into an open field, actually found a stray cat that way and took
No,
it to an
nice.
adoption center.
Oh,
Named
good
it
for you.
Bray. Yeah.
Yeah,
Uh,
cool.
but yeah, there's some different things going on there. I spent a lot of time up on the Ice Age Trail, another long distance trail that I
Mm.
plan to do some time on. That's 1,000 miles throughout the state
Oh,
of
wow.
Wisconsin, and
Really?
yeah, kind of it's meant to follow and showcase a lot of the Pleistocene era, like geographical changes, from glacier activity
Okay.
and stuff like that. So um, there's a lot of strange formations and bogs and different types of environments out here in Wisconsin. So
Mm.
it's
Oh,
it's
yeah.
interesting to see like different things there. I'm struggling to find Bigfoot in this area. I haven't had
So,
an encounter or found footprints all that often, but I guess I observe knocks a lot,
okay.
which knocks in themselves are kind of confusing, whether or not it's gunshots or something along those lines. But I didn't really have anything happen in Wisconsin yet, but I did take a little trip to Michigan,
Oh,
and in one of those national
yeah.
forests up there, and I had something making knocks early in the morning, but
Was that in Upper Peninsula or
no, it was in
okay.
it was in one of the little nooks and crannies of like the I guess what do you call that, mainland Michigan
Yep.
or
Okay.
but yeah, I was in the mitten part.
Yeah, right. The Upper Peninsula, dude. If you ever get up there, that place will mess. Like that place is wild, big time.
Yeah. Yeah, I've actually
Yeah.
I've circled through Michigan across like the straits of the
Okay.
lakes there and then went down into upper Michigan, and then I also kind of drove up there and to the base of Lake Superior and did some investigations there. Whenever I get my little weekends off of work, I try to go up
Hmm.
there that way. But it's been difficult because I haven't been here in the height of summer. I first got up here in like the fall, early fall, and then went back down stateside because I was launching a new site for my company up here. And then
Okay.
I went back home and then took a position back up here.
Mm.
So I was up here for like early fall and then came back in late fall. And I don't know, it's been kind of quiet up here. So I don't know if the winters are extreme. I mean, they get negative 50 degrees at their worst here.
It's
They
not
get
been fun, dude.
wind blast from like the lake effect, from the prairie
Yeah.
effect, like all that. Like
Yeah.
I was out hiking with the dog on in the snow today, and that was just like a little riverside park, but it made it seem
Hmm.
like I was trudging through Siberia. Yeah.
Totally. Totally.
but but
Going
yeah,
back to Wisconsin, one of my buddies, Jay Pachochin, is up there, and he does a lot of Bigfoot stuff up, and I don't know town names, but in the Kettle Moraine area.
yeah.
Yeah, he has a lot of interesting encounters up there. It might be something to look into if you spend some time in Wisconsin. But yeah, you
I
never
think
know,
I was
man.
in the southern terminus of the Kettle.
Oh,
I
okay,
think at one point, yeah,
okay.
that was. I'm not exactly sure how it's laid out. But yeah, that was after the Bray Road thing. I looked around and I was like, well, where's some extensive forest? Where can I
Totally.
go? And I ended up on like there was a portion of the trail that went through there, and walked around and found a little marshy area there, and
Man.
it is kind of wild out here, in a lot of
Hmm.
places. Like I there's just a little trail, a greenway trail, like, and I'm in the city,
Okay.
and there's like a little greenway trail, and I'm like out there finding dead coyotes. Like, found a
Oh,
dead
really?
coyote out here like a month ago, and I don't know what
Wow.
killed it. But then the next week I went out there, and you could see where all these other coyotes were
Oh, man.
cannibalizing the first one.
Yeah.
So it's a pretty extreme, you know. I think Wisconsin's one of those states where it's like not everything's been totally developed and
Yep.
has like
Oh,
a clear
totally.
line. Like, you've got like all these little pockets of wilderness just kind of seeping in and invading. Like,
Hmm.
I guess they're not invading, the cities are invading, but you just kind of, it's always been like a blend. Like, we got this wild Rock River going right through this city of Beloit, you know.
Gotcha.
And it's a historical, really civilized area, and then all of a sudden you got this river, you know, bringing who knows what into the area, you know. But I
Is there a
kind of like the.
spot? Oh, go ahead.
I was just saying, I like the mixture of, you know, of wild side into the civilized part of it, you know.
Totally. Yeah. Is there a spot in the US that you're wanting to go to check out Bigfoot stuff, but you haven't gotten to yet?
Yes.
Yeah.
Um, Coming from a guy who's been to Falk, you know, down in Boggy
Mm,
Creek territory, and
okay.
been out in the Smoky Mountains, Colorado Rockies. Um, I've been to, you know, Northern California, Washington, Oregon.
Yeah.
The place that I haven't had a chance to get to yet that I really want to check out is the Adirondacks in New York.
Oh my goodness.
I've got
Dude.
family out there. I was born at the base of the Adirondacks, and
Oh, really?
I just haven't jumped into it yet. So now that I'm a
Oh,
little bit
yeah.
closer, I might have to start making that trip. So I don't know if I'm
Um,
closer, but
so yeah, growing up in Western Mass, like we took a few trips out to the Adirondacks and like, yeah, that area. I mean, even Seth Breedlove is coming out with his next Bigfoot documentary is all about pretty much the Adirondacks. And I've seen an advanced copy of it, and like, dude, you could totally like I would love to see you go out there and hear what your stories are because it's wild out there, man. Totally wild. But what was the Falk area like? Do you mind sharing a little bit
oh,
about what that was like?
I I don't know. I think it's a place that's pretty dear to my heart. It's one of my favorite
Mm.
spots to go to. And I mean, I started going there when I started going to the Texas Bigfoot conference down there, the one that Craig
Oh yeah,
Woolheater puts on. He's
totally.
been putting it
Hmm.
on for a while. I mean, there were a lot of other ones I think that were closer to my region in Tennessee. But I said, well, I want to go to one that's been established. I want one that has
Sure.
guests that like I know and that I've like read their books, and yeah, and his was the one that was like up to scale for what I was looking for my first Bigfoot conference. And yeah, I went down there and I checked it out, but Falk was like right on the way. You know, that's only an hour north, and I'm coming from the north, you know, when I go
Okay.
down there to Texas. So yeah, I stopped by and took a quick look, discovered the Monster Mart, and
Nice. Nice.
then I was like, I got to go back here. And I think that conference year, Lyle Blackburn had just recently, within a couple of years, wrote his book on the subject.
Mm.
And so, you know, he was bringing up fresh sightings and stuff out of that area that he continued to like observe. And he actually took us back up there, did a tour of like all like the relevant
Oh
sites of the
wow.
area. And he was pointing out like, this is where the Ford House used to be, or this is where, you know, they found the tracks in the bean field from the movie, you know. And yeah, and then he took us to Boggy Creek, and we all had photo ops and stuff.
That's
And
awesome.
that was a cool experience. But from there, like, everybody else kind of went back. And I did
Mm.
go back to Jefferson to do a little stuff around Caddo Lake because a lot of sightings come out of that area as
Okay.
well. But then on my way back, I went and spent like a couple of nights in Falk. And that first year
Mm,
was was a big year, because I was a guy who hadn't had a lot of like Bigfoot experiences
okay.
because I don't do it full time and I'm an individual. So, it's not like I'm part of a 20-man expedition. And if one
Hmm.
guy finds tracks when there's 20 guys looking for it, it's so easy when you're just an individual to miss something.
Yeah. Oh, I
So,
bet. Yeah.
on another hand, maybe you're less intimidated. Maybe something will come right up and
Hmm.
hang out near your camp. But I mean, it's probably going to do it to where you're never even going to know.
That's a good point.
So I didn't really have a lot of success. And this was like my first year. This was after the Appalachian Trail, the year
Okay.
after. And it was like my first, like, okay, if I'm going to get back into Bigfoot, I'm going to put more effort into it. I'm going to do it right.
Nice.
And, and so, yeah, out there, I went and explored an area of Mercer Bayou. There, I had
Okay.
a little kayak at the time, and I kayaked back into the bayou, and it was like the beginning. If you've seen Legend of Boggy Creek, like at the beginning,
Hmm.
where there's like the beaver swimming around, and you have like all these weird bird noises, the
Okay.
bah, bah, like I thought that was a beaver until I like saw a bird make that noise
Oh,
in
that's funny.
person. But
Oh,
it was
wow.
like but yeah, so you start and then you have these tree frogs, like, croaking, and, like, I was out there on my kayak, and I had a tree frog hop on my kayak, and, like, a butterfly was, like, flying by, and it was, like, a really
Nice.
weird, like, another serene moment in my life, but it was also, like, the beginning of Boggy Creek. It was, like, everything was kind of peaceful and natural, and I was just when I started hearing those birds making that sound, like, when I
Yeah.
heard the same soundtrack as the beginning of the movie, I was like, "Okay, when do I hear the scream?" Like, and
Oh,
I
man.
mean, I didn't hear anything at that point, but it was getting dark, and I remember I had started paddling really fast back to the car, and I went back and there were actually some Bigfoot investigators in my camp. Like these guys were coming from they didn't come from the
Really?
conference. They came from like northern Arkansas.
Oh, wow.
They spent the whole day with like some person that claimed they had Bigfoot and fairies living in their backyard. And this is like the fairy holes and this
Really?
is where Bigfoot eats like from the bird feeder. And
Oh, wow.
they were just kind of disappointed because they're like this seems a little extreme and out there and we were hoping we get to like do some research. And I
Hmm.
come out of Mercer Bayou like, guys, I found a spot, like
Oh, awesome,
you
dude.
want to
Yeah.
team up, let's go
Totally.
like to Mercer Bayou. And so I went out with like this, like there might have been five of them. So there might have been
Wow.
six of us all together. And we went out and there was an upland area at the edge of the bayou. And we went back there and we started wood knocking. They had a Louisville
Okay.
slugger and was just knocking on a tree
Nice. Nice.
and we heard something respond back in the bayou. Now
Whoa.
I had just explored that area and I knew that this was at least like waist deep water
Yeah.
in most areas. You had a lot of forested area, but it was all bald cypress. So these are like the trees with the submerged
Okay. Yep.
roots. And so something slowly but surely started coming out of the bayou in the dark. There was one car
Whoa.
in the parking lot with a boat ramp, and those people eventually, like they were. I saw them take off when I left, and then they were coming back as we were doing our wood knocks. But we were wondering, like, what is that? What's coming towards us? Is it that person on the boat? Like what's
Hmm.
going on? Well, we saw the lights of the boat come from a different direction, and they kind of went through the channel and then came back and went up to dock. And as they went to the dock, we continued to hear the wood knocks, but at that point, the boat must have startled whatever it was, and
Oh,
it started
yeah.
to go in a different direction and veered off back into the bayou.
Mm.
And we just kind of like were sitting there observing it. These guys that were wood knocking, they never been out there bigfooting before. I've heard knocks on a few different occasions. Like even my
Okay.
first California trip, I observed a little bit of that.
Hmm.
Um, while I was waiting at a trailhead, for a ride to come and pick me up. But
Okay.
back in Arkansas, like these guys never done that before. So they were just like, what's going on? Like, is something actually coming towards us? Like
Oh,
what, like
wow.
what's going to happen? They were
Yeah.
scared. And, but yeah, whatever it was, the boat kind of made it change its direction. And we went back and talked about it. And I actually have one of my videos on YouTube. I think it's just a little interview I had with those guys talking
Oh,
about it.
nice.
And the following year I went back, and they had drained the bayou. And I tried to go out there and have a repeat of what happened last time.
Mm-hmm.
And I was doing some knocks. And this is where like I get frustrated because when you're doing Bigfoot investigations, if you don't have other people there to kind of corroborate like what you're saying, you just feel like you're going crazy.
Right. Oh, I'm sure.
Um,
So I have yet to do it, but I totally get like what you're saying. Yeah.
Like, so, I mean, and I feel like I'm a pretty psychologically sound guy, like I
Okay.
make good, responsible decisions on a regular
Nice. Nice.
basis, like I don't
Yep.
hallucinate. I don't just walk out one day on my way to work and see leprechauns dancing on the roof, so I'm trying to figure out like, okay, if I'm out here Bigfooting, like, am I psychologically like tripped out enough, like
Mm,
based off the circumstances? Am I imagining what's happening right now, or am I perceiving things incorrectly?
okay.
But the second time I went out to that access point of the bayou. And of course, everybody talks about Boggy Creek, everybody talks about the Sulphur River, but I know, like, I want to spend a considerable amount of time in the bayou just as well,
Mm.
because I continue to have weird things happen out of there.
Yeah, totally.
The second time I was out there and I was wood knocking, and I heard a barred owl, and that's one of those things is like it's almost on cue now. Like every time I try a wood knock, I hear a barred owl wherever I am. It's just kind of like
Really?
I don't. There might be
Ooh,
something that just sets them off.
that's weird, man. Yeah.
But they're pretty widespread across the United States, and they're pretty common to be doing that
Sure.
at dusk. So if I'm out there and I think dusk is a fair point to start doing wood knocks, then it's not completely out of the ordinary for an owl, an animal that's active at that hour, to also be making sounds. So that being said, I heard a barred owl, and then I heard a different owl. It was a what what you would think would be a great horned owl.
Okay.
So you get some different, and getting into Bigfoot. One of the things I've done, like using my combined interest of animals and having a possessing an animal knowledge, I've tried to understand different vocalizations and sounds, to kind of narrow down what is and isn't a Bigfoot vocalization.
Sure.
So a lot of people don't understand a lot of these Bigfoot sounds, the Bigfoot screams is like the mating call of a male red fox, or um
Interesting.
different animal sounds. So
Okay.
I kind of caught on that pretty early, and so I was like, well, I need to know all these different sounds of owls, because people say screech owl, barred owl, all this other stuff. Well, I'm out there in Falk, or the area around Falk, and I heard the barred owl, which is very distinct. Like they say it sounds like somebody asking you who cooks for you, which
Right.
is the
Yep. Yep.
and then the other sound was the very low, like of like a great horned owl.
Those are killer owl impressions, by the way. Like
I mean, I have a
my
lot of
dad
spare
used to
time.
do that stuff all the time because he was a summer camp director. So you
Yeah.
nailed it, man. Good job.
So those are the owls. And I noticed something, like I heard one barred owl over here, right? And then I
Okay.
heard a great horned owl over there. And I was like, that's not weird. Owls are territorial. They'll stake
Okay.
out their claims or whatever. And then I kept knocking, right? I was like, I'm just gonna keep going. Owls are cool. That's there. I'm just gonna keep this up though and see what I can get.
Sure.
And like I'd knock, and then I heard like another owl, like another
Mhm.
barred owl over there. So now I've got like three owls in the area. And then
Okay.
as I continued to knock, then over here was the great horned owl, like in this side, and then over there is like the barred owl. So it sounded like I'd
Oh,
continue to listen, and it sounded like there were three separate locations. All of them had two owls in the same area. Like,
that's weird.
so I was like, that sounds, yeah, like it's unusual. We wouldn't expect like
Yeah.
two other like different species of owls to just hang out. Like I said
Right.
earlier, they're pretty territorial. So it was like
Yeah.
one over there, one over there, one over there. pack of coyotes run through behind me, and they're yipping and yowling. They're on the hunt.
Oh man. Yeah.
It's wild out there. I mean, you get out there by the river bottoms or the bayou, and there's just wildlife everywhere. Well, after those coyotes ran through, then I started hearing like yips of coyotes in the same area. So the mental image that I was
Mm,
expected to accept was like three different triangulated areas around me, all of which like had two different types of owls and a coyote like hanging out at the base of the tree. And I was just like,
dude,
that,
that's weird.
yeah.
Yeah.
And I got really upset about it. I was like, what the heck, you know?
Yeah.
So I went out there and I at that point I got away from the trees and I was like in the big open parking area. I wanted to have like at least, 20 feet of visual all around me, because I felt like I was like something was closing in on me.
Sure.
And so from there, I was like, well, the knocks just seem to make a bunch of animals respond. So what if I started making my own sounds? But what would I do? Would I start doing owl sounds or what? So then I was like, well, I'm a human, I'm pretty domesticated. So what if I started doing domesticated animals? So I
Okay.
started so this is where I talk about like, are you going crazy? Like
Right.
did you just have like a little moment in the wilderness, or whatever? I started meowing like a cat,
Oh my
mooing
goodness.
like a
Nice.
cow, barking
Yep.
like a dog. And I did that for maybe 5 minutes. And then I heard a knock. And that bugged me, man. Like, cause everybody talks
Wow.
about them like mimicking, but I couldn't tell the difference. Everybody says, well, that just sounded like a certain owl, like a deep voiced owl. It wasn't a good imitation. You could tell, but for me, I was like, I could not tell. And I mean, I might have just been out there
Dude,
with like a whole Noah's Ark assortment of animals,
man.
that knock at the end was really, it just rubbed me the wrong way, and I was just like, I'm
Mm,
mad. Like, this is the first time where I reached a limit where things were happening and I was just exhausted, and I was like,
wow.
I don't want to be here anymore. I don't care if something's out there. It's made me angry. Like, so
Wow.
I got Sierra sounds that I had, from
Okay.
those recordings,
Yep.
and I had it on the CD, and I put it in the CD thing. I blared it up to full volume, and the one where it's like really mad, where it's like the,
Yeah, yeah.
that's the one I played, and I drove out at about 5 miles an hour. I was so upset, and I wanted whatever out there, like, to know that I was not happy how the night went. And I went back like another night, maybe 2 nights, or no, it was one more night and like the following morning, and I still try to do some things. And at that point, like, everybody was just done. Like, it was quiet. I didn't hear any owls, no
Wow.
coyotes. It was like a ghost town after I made my dramatic exit.
That is
Um,
wild.
and then that same area, I found like just collections of animal bones, like right there near the parking lot, and that could be people too.
Really?
They go out there on
Yeah,
their
that's
boats
true.
and they
That's
hunt a
true.
lot of stuff, but there's a lot of weird random collections, like big animal femurs, like, and then like a turtle shell, I guess, whatever you could put in the stew pot.
Yeah,
Um,
true. Yeah.
but I went out there one other time with some people, and it was a couple of ladies, and they were doing vocalizations, and I would do a few vocalizations, but
Really?
I'd let them do like a lot of the whoops and howls and stuff.
Okay.
And we started hearing what sounded like vocalizations too.
No way.
I had a new audio recorder, but
Okay.
I didn't know how to use it, and I was recording with it, but I had the mic turned all the way down. And so
Oh
like
no.
probably one of the most active like nights I've
Yeah.
had for potential vocalizations.
Yep.
It just didn't record. And,
Oh
everybody
man.
talks about the curse of Bigfoot. That's like my classic moment for that.
Exactly. Yeah, no, I hear that over and over again, man. It's like there's always it's definitely somewhere cursed, man.
Yeah.
Oh man. What you got some killer stories. Tate was totally right, man. Like you're rocking it.
It's for me though, it's like I've never had that, ooh, a sighting. It's always that weird
Okay.
vague thing that just like,
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah.
it's like, yeah, he's got some credit here, but we're gonna keep it extremely vague, and it's like, I don't know. Like, I see it either way. Like, it was either a whole lot of something or a whole lot of nothing, and it just the way I choose to tell the story. I don't want anybody to
Sure.
like think one way or another. Like, I mean, I use it to I guess the listener's discretion. Like, I had some
Hmm.
weird things happen. I don't want to force you to believe that I had an experience with Bigfoot or I didn't.
Right.
I just want you to kind of determine for yourself based off of my observations, like, hey, that is weird,
Right. No, totally. And well, I mean, hats off to you, because a lot of people will, you know, just try to steer it a certain way and not really let the listener figure it out for themselves. So that's respectable.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I will say that it seems like more weird things happen to me when I'm out in the woods looking for Bigfoot.
Mm,
Whereas if I'm just taking a regular camping trip with friends to a spot that we like, you know,
okay.
it's it it's not always a factor. That weird, unexplainable experience isn't always a factor every time I step off into the woods. It's usually when I'm on the trail of something. So
Definitely. Man, Ron, this has been really fun. Thank you for coming on and chatting. Uh, for already an hour, man. This is crazy.
yeah, it
Um,
flies by. It always
it
flies
it
by.
really does. Yeah, it totally does. Like, I was just talking to Mark Mercell a few weeks ago, the Ape Canyon guy, and it was like, bam, the hour was like, gone.
Yeah.
Um, can you remind the listeners again, like, if they how to best keep up to date with if you're gonna hopefully continue to put out those Bigfoot videos and interviews that you were mentioning before, how can they do that?
Well, my YouTube channel is just kind of a weird, obscure channel with my name attached to it. So it's just Ron Reed, and typically you won't get any reactions until you start Googling like Ron Reed with Bigfoot or Ron Reed with up the trail or Appalachian Trail hike or something like that. But for the most part, for anything that's like uh, my Bigfoot related content, I usually share all those videos and the links from YouTube on my Facebook page, which I thought this was funny. It's Sasquatch Society, not Bigfoot Society.
Yeah, I saw that. I was like, oh, funny. Okay. There's
Yeah,
other Bigfoot societies too, which is even funnier, but they're a
yeah,
little bit that's not the, actual Bigfoot society. It's like, I think there's like Pennsylvania Bigfoot Society, but yeah, this
right.
funny Sasquatch Society. What is Sasquatch Society? I
What
think
is
that's
it?
interesting. Yeah.
Okay, so I guess my approach to look at it was it was like supposed to be a jack of all trades, all encompassing um thing, community to grow like a society of Bigfoot enthusiasts. So
Oh,
whether you
cool.
liked Bigfoot in pop culture media, there's a place for
Yeah.
that. Over time, I've been actually trying to been conceptualizing an idea for a podcast like for several years, and I want to have a podcast that's basically a critical thinking podcast for
Okay.
Bigfoot enthusiasts. So
Oh, cool.
because of my interest in the natural sciences, paleontology
Mm,
and wildlife behavior and things like that, I want to have a podcast that kind of thinks of those not frequently thought of questions about
nice.
Bigfoot. Like, if we're going to entertain the existence of Bigfoot in North America, like, we have to accept the fact that it survived Pleistocene America. Like, this
Mm,
thing, like,
mm-hmm.
does it make sense? Could Bigfoot like contend with giant ground sloths, mammoths,
Oh, that is cool,
saber-toothed
man.
cats? So like,
Yeah.
what are the adaptations that we can see in eyewitness reports
Mm,
that would have been good for Bigfoot to have 10,000 years ago?
wow.
So it's one of those things, you kind of bridge those pieces. Natural history will kind of provide answers for you when you understand it well enough. So that's just one of many of the different like conversations
Yeah.
that you could have. You could talk about nutritional requirements and stuff like that.
I like
Um,
it, man. That's cool.
so so
That's
yeah, I
cool.
mean, and still in the same sense, I still want to have current events up there. Um, and put a lot of different bits of information pertaining to Bigfoot and cryptozoology up there. So I don't know. I
Love it.
guess I guess a good podcast has a lot of variety in it.
True.
And so um, yeah, I guess it's a wide branching thing. But yeah, the Sasquatch Society thing is just a thing that I do to kind of put some Bigfoot information out there, and people tend to
Nice.
like it. I got a
That's awesome.
couple thousand people that are into the page. So
Oh,
that's
wow.
probably
That's
the
a
best way to
Facebook
stay in
page.
touch. Yeah, it's
Okay.
Facebook. It's yeah, Sasquatch Society. If you search that in Facebook, it'll pop right up.
I'm
And
totally gonna
any
check it out.
videos that I put up that are related to Bigfoot on YouTube, that'll all kind of it'll make its way through to that page. So,
Nice. Nice.
but yeah,
Cool,
that's
man.
about it.
Yeah, I will put those in the show notes for real so people can check that out. But um thank you again for coming on and sharing your stories. Very, very interesting. Um we already talked earlier. You're going to stay on for a little bit longer to share a few more stories for the Patreon. If you want to hear those, you go to patreon.com/Bigfoot Society, support the podcast for $5 a month, and hear what Ron is going to share and some other crazy stuff as well we've got in there. So thanks again for coming on, Ron. And thanks again, listeners, for listening, and have a great rest of your day, guys. Thanks, Ron.
Yep. Thanks.